This is my favorite shop. Hello, Martin. I have 5 grandchildren. I want to buy violins for them. André Rieu, who built a fortune playing waltzes, just cancelled everything after a terrifying collapse at 74. His body finally said no more. In Mexico City, fans got sent home, shows got cancelled, and now his son has taken control of his massive empire. The shocking truth: the man who performs 100 shows a year and owns 80 properties might be forced to retire even though he swore he'd play until he was 140. His final concert in Maastricht could be his goodbye forever. André Rieu was born in childhood Maastricht, Netherlands in 1949 into a family where music was everything but love was hard to find. His father was the conductor of the Maastricht Symphony Orchestra, a serious man who believed in discipline, not affection. André was the third of 6 children, and growing up their home felt more like a military camp than a place for kids. Hugs and warmth were rare. His parents were strict Roman Catholics who believed in rules and silence. They didn't let friends visit. They didn't laugh much. André once said, "My parents didn't love me very much." It wasn't a guess, it was something he deeply believed, and it stayed with him. From a young age, André's natural energy clashed with his parents' cold style. His mother was so focused on grades and music practice that when teachers called André an artist, she felt insulted. That kind of mindset made André feel invisible unless he was performing perfectly. He spent years in therapy trying to understand why his childhood felt so empty. But maybe that emptiness became fuel that would one day help him change how the world experiences classical music. At age 5, something unexpected happened. André fell in love not with the violin, but with his violin teacher. She was 18, blonde and beautiful. He could barely pay attention during lessons because he was so distracted by her. But that crush gave him a reason to pick up the instrument every day. He didn't care about scales or technique. He just wanted to copy the way she played. He watched her hands, her movements, her sound. And within weeks, while other kids were still struggling with basic notes, André had already figured out vibrato, emotional wobble in sound that makes music feel alive. That's what stuck with him. Not perfection-emotion. As he grew older, the tension with his father only got worse. André didn't want to play stiff, serious classical music. He wanted to make it joyful, fun, alive, but to his father, that idea was an insult. When André told him he wanted to play waltzes, his father snapped, "I didn't educate you to do waltzes." It was a cold rejection. And things got even colder when André brought his future wife Marjorie home. Instead of welcoming her, his mother told her to leave and told André to go back to his clean room like a child. That was the final straw. He walked out with Marjorie and never looked back. From that day on, his parents never came to a single one of his concerts, not even when he was filling arenas all over the world. When his father died in 1992, he died without ever seeing what André had become. But behind all this rejection, André was forming a plan. While working in his father's orchestra, he started to notice something strange. Most of the musicians didn't seem to care about the music. They talked about the weather, they complained about pay, it was lifeless. But then, during the encores, something magical happened. The orchestra would play a Strauss waltz and suddenly the audience came alive. People smiled, they hummed, the energy changed. That's when André knew this was the kind of music he wanted to play, not to impress critics but to move people. One day, he played a soft serenade for a dying woman who hadn't opened her eyes in days. But as the music filled the room, she opened them. In that moment, André understood the true power of music. Starting his own orchestra wasn't about being perfect. It was about feeling. That's when the idea of starting his own orchestra started to grow. In 1978, at age 29, with his newborn son at home and little money to spare, André started small. He formed the Maastricht Salon Orchestra with just a handful of musicians. They played wherever they could: weddings, town halls, border towns near Germany and Belgium. They played old-fashioned waltzes and salon music that most people had forgotten. It wasn't glamorous, they weren't making much money. But André didn't care, he was doing what he loved. There was one night during a small performance when he played Franz Lehner's Gold and Silver Waltz. He poured his heart into it and felt something shift. It was like the music spoke back to him. That night, he decided this was his future. He didn't care if critics said it was cheesy. He didn't care if the elite laughed. He believed classical music could be joyful. And he wasn't going to stop until everyone else saw it. In 1987, André Rieu found himself at a turning point. He was nearly 40 and had been leading the Maastricht Salon Orchestra for almost 10 years, but something felt off. The excitement was gone, the limits were clear. And the old format just wasn't enough anymore. He wanted something bigger. He didn't just want to play music, he wanted to create magic. The kind of joy and spectacle people once felt when Johann Strauss himself would play the violin while conducting, moving his whole body with the rhythm. That energy, that fun, that sense of being alive. Rieu wanted to bring it back, but it wasn't an easy decision. Starting something new meant taking a massive risk. Hiring professional musicians meant real money, and he wasn't rich. Every musician he brought in meant more financial pressure on his own shoulders. Bookings were uncertain, and classical music wasn't exactly known for taking risks. Yet, in his heart, he knew he had to try. On January 1st, 1988, his new creation, the Johann Strauss Orchestra, had its first concert. It was small, just 12 musicians and a modest crowd. But something about it felt different. Rieu didn't follow the rules. He didn't dress the orchestra in the usual black. He didn't keep the stage quiet and formal. He brought in laughter, folk tunes, dramatic lighting, and theatrical flair. Critics didn't like it, they called it cheap and gimmicky. But the audience, they clapped, they smiled, they got involved. The moment that changed everything. Rieu had found a spark and he wasn't going to let it go. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was May 1995 during the Champions League final in Vienna. Ajax and Bayern Munich were battling it out, and at halftime something unusual happened. Rieu and his orchestra stepped onto the pitch and performed Shostakovich's Waltz No. 2. The tune had become familiar to Dutch audiences because of a TV commercial, but no one expected what came next. The entire stadium, 50,000 football fans, started swaying, humming, and losing themselves in the music. It was unlike anything anyone had seen. Cameras broadcast the moment live to 300 million people across Europe. It wasn't just a halftime show, it was a cultural shockwave. In the weeks that followed, Rieu sold 200,000 CDs. The album Strauss and Company, which had been released the year before, suddenly exploded. It stayed at the top of the Dutch charts for 19 weeks straight, becoming the country's best-selling album of the entire decade. People who never cared about classical music were now buying his albums, going to his shows, and falling in love with waltzes. Music experts still talk about that football match as the moment André Rieu became more than just a violinist, he became a movement. But not everyone was thrilled. The classical music world hit back hard. They called him a fraud, said he was destroying tradition, accused him of turning centuries-old music into a circus. In one brutal review, a famous conductor even called his performances musical pornography. The critics hated the colorful dresses, the stage jokes, the simplified arrangements, and the massive sets. Things got even more intense in 2008 when Rieu built a replica of Vienna's Schönbrunn Palace fountains, ice rinks, horses, and all just for a stage backdrop. It cost 34 million euros and purists were horrified. Still, Rieu didn't back down. He believed music should belong to everyone, not just experts in concert halls. He wanted kids, parents, professors, cleaners, everyone to enjoy the same music that used to be locked away behind stiff traditions. And the truth was hard to ignore. Millions of fans loved him. They packed his concerts, they danced in the aisles, and they bought albums, lots of them. The Rieu effect. In 1994, Strauss and Company had already made waves. But after that 1995 performance, it went through the roof. In the Netherlands alone, it sold 750,000 copies within months. In Germany, it smashed into the top 5 on the charts, something unheard of for classical music. By the time it peaked, it had sold over 3 million copies worldwide. It outsold some of the biggest names in pop, including Celine Dion and Bon Jovi in major European markets. Even big record stores started giving more shelf space to classical music because of him. Industry insiders called it the Rieu effect. Universal Music reported that his albums made more profit than any other classical artist. He wasn't just almost broke Birmingham, Manchester, Glasgow, all gone from the calendar. Rieu called his orchestra a family, and he meant it. Many of them had been with him for more than 25 years. Losing one of their own right before Christmas was devastating. Merckx was flown back to the Netherlands, where he passed away 5 days later. When Rieu finally returned to the UK in March, something had changed. The magic was still there, but the crowds were smaller. People remembered what happened in December, and so did he. André Rieu had spent decades enchanting the world with his music. But in March 2024, his return to Mexico City nearly broke him. At 74, he was still traveling the globe with the energy of a man half his age, until his body suddenly gave out. After just 2 performances, André collapsed from a brutal mix of jet lag, high altitude, and a nasty flu. Mexico City, sitting over 2,000 meters above sea level, pushed him past the edge. Even his orchestra members were affected, dealing with nosebleeds and exhaustion, but for André, it was worse. He was feverish, dizzy, and felt like, in his own words, 100 years old. His body suddenly gave out that night backstage. He called his wife and said something he'd never said before: "I don't want a first concert day like this anymore." It was the first time the unstoppable showman admitted he might need to slow down. The concerts were cancelled, 40,000 fans missed out. And the man who prided himself on never missing a performance had to go home. This wasn't just a one-time scare. André had been pushing through sickness for years. In 2010, he lost his balance due to a viral infection in his inner ear, which derailed his tour and took months to recover from. He even performed with a high fever in 2019. He never let anyone see the pain. But Mexico was different. His legs shook. He thought he couldn't hold on, and this time, he said it out loud. Once back home in Marie, he made it clear he wasn't going to torture himself anymore. His son Pierre, who had already taken over most of the business responsibilities, now took a step further. He started changing the way tours were planned. No more exhausting international trips. No more pushing to the brink. They started planning smaller, closer shows, Europe only. Maybe, probably never again. He trusted Pierre completely. Pierre had become more than a business manager. He was now the one keeping his father safe. Over the years, he had slowly taken the weight off André's shoulders, handling logistics, the crew, and keeping everything running smoothly. André used to want control over every little thing. Now, he trusted Pierre completely. The bond between them had grown stronger after every close call, after every health scare. And behind the scenes, Pierre had become the one steering the ship, making sure his father could still do what he loved, but without risking his life to do it. But André's journey hasn't only been about health scares and musical highs. In 2015, he faced an unexpected controversy that had nothing to do with music. During one of his famous summer concerts in Maastricht, 11 children from a Romanian music group took the stage. They were part of an ensemble led by pan flute legend George Zamfir. Everything seemed fine until Dutch authorities slapped André with a massive fine, claiming the kids had performed past the legal working hours for minors. 236,000 euros later. Reduced, but still one of the largest cultural fines in Dutch history. André's team fought back. They said the children didn't actually perform past 11 p.m. They just came back on stage to wave during the curtain call. And technically, those kids were under Zamfir's direction, not André's. It took 2 years of court battles, but in the end the court agreed with him. He wasn't their employer, the fine was thrown out. Still, the case raised eyebrows, and for some critics, it left a mark on his reputation. Despite these shadows, André Rieu never lost his connection with people. In 2019, when a band of mentally disabled musicians had all their instruments stolen, André didn't hesitate. He read about it in the newspaper and offered to replace everything, 20,000 euros worth of gear, just like that. No PR stunt, no big announcement, just kindness. And when Notre Dame Cathedral went up in flames, he offered 700 tons of steel for its restoration. Quiet gestures that revealed a side of him that didn't always make headlines. The Rieu Empire. There's his precious Stradivarius. At one point, financial troubles nearly forced him to sell it. He listed it for an absurd price, just to keep it safe. And when things got better, he took it off the market. That violin isn't just wood and strings, it's part of him. He now plays a rare 1732 model and sends it twice a year to Vienna for maintenance. A master craftsman disassembles it, varnishes it, and makes sure it stays perfect. It's guarded like treasure on every tour. André Rieu might be the face of the world's most joyful orchestra, but behind the smiling violinist is a quiet empire held together by family and a few surprising secrets. It all starts with his wife, Marjorie. Most fans see her as just André's partner in life, but she's something more, something hidden. For decades, she's been writing songs for the orchestra without ever taking credit. Her work lives in the music, not in the spotlight. While André became the star, Marjorie stayed in the background, shaping the sound, guiding the vision, and pushing him to create something new when the old world of classical music no longer excited him. She was also the one who pushed for one of the boldest moves the couple ever made, buying a centuries-old castle. The call came out of nowhere. They were on vacation when their accountant told them a piece of the 15th century Mr. Castle was up for sale. Marjorie didn't hesitate. "Sell more records," she said. And just like that, the Rieu family bought it. It wasn't just a home. It became the headquarters of the entire Rieu operation. André turned the dark, cold rooms into a warm, bright fantasyland. He did the designing himself, mixing Austrian, Bavarian, and Venetian styles. The castle is now part office, part performance space, part dream. And deep inside, you can still hear the echoes of music and the whispers of family decisions that shaped the empire. Now the next generation is stepping into that world. André's granddaughter Daisy is only 9, but she's already rehearsing on the piano with the orchestra. It's not a publicity stunt. This is how the Rieu legacy works, quietly, gradually, through love and talent. André knows what it means to grow up in music. He lived it. And now Daisy is living it too, just like her father Pierre did years ago when he moved from behind the scenes work to becoming the orchestra's business director. The Rieu family doesn't force their children into the spotlight. They open the door, let them walk in, and wait for the music to begin. He didn't just play music. André Rieu didn't just play music. He tore down everything that made classical concerts feel like cold, distant rituals. When he stepped on stage, it wasn't about silence, posture, or tuxedos. It was about joy. If you felt like dancing, he wanted you in the aisles. If you wanted to sing, clap, or cry, you were in the right place. By the late 2000s and 10s, he was telling audiences not to bother with ball gowns unless they planned to twirl in them. He turned the symphony into a party, and people loved him for it. Back in the day, most classical concerts felt more like lectures than live shows. Stiff clothes, quiet crowds, and rules so rigid that even clapping at the wrong time would earn you a nasty glare. Rieu hated that. After years in traditional orchestras, he was sick of the cold divide between musicians and audiences. So he flipped the script. His concerts began to feel more like weddings than recitals, full of laughter, emotion, and even fake snow when it fit the mood. This wasn't just rebellion, it was smart. While others stuck to posters and newspaper listings, Rieu jumped on social media before most of his competitors even knew what it was. By the time other orchestras were arguing over whether Instagram was too casual, Rieu was already viral. His performance of Danny Boy in Dublin didn't just reach fans, it exploded, pulling in millions of views like a chart-topping music video. But his genius wasn't just in going online, it was how he used it. Each tour stop came with region-specific music, local themes, and content that felt made just for that city. He didn't just invite fans, he pulled them into the show. From polls to sneak peeks, parties to giveaways, every detail was planned to build community. He made classical music feel like it belonged to everyone, not just people who understood Beethoven's symphonies inside out. He understood something simply. Then came the cinema era. Not content with selling out stadiums, Rieu brought his concerts to the big screen. But instead of filming a stage and calling it a day, he told a story. In his 2025 film The Dream Continues, he takes fans on a river journey through his hometown, blending home videos, behind-the-scenes footage, and live performances from all over the world. It wasn't just about music anymore. It was about memory, emotion, and letting the audience step inside his dream. Even the movie theaters had to adjust. Gone were the rules of silence and straight backs. Now, people could bring snacks, sip drinks, and settle in for a night that felt more like a celebration than a screening. Are why you understood something simple but powerful. People want to feel something real, and he gave them that. At first, critics were brutal. They mocked his hair, his showmanship, and his massive fan base. Some called him the worst thing to happen to classical music. But the tide turned when business schools and economists started paying attention, while other orchestras begged for funding and played to half-empty halls. Rieu was selling out arenas and topping charts. Suddenly, what once looked like gimmicks started to look like survival strategies. A darker past André Rieu, the man millions know for his dazzling waltzes and warm smile, carries a past far darker than the spotlight suggests. Behind the grand concerts and sold-out tour is a man who spent years in therapy just trying to undo the damage left by a cold and distant father. His own dad never once told him he was proud, never praised his violin playing, and never really saw him. The pain ran so deep, André even skipped his father's funeral. As a young man, he watched his brother flee to another country just to escape the same emotional storm. But therapy gave André a way forward. Even if the scars still linger offstage, André's world is surprisingly quiet and practical. While fans imagine him living a life of luxury and glamour, he's been quietly buying up real estate, nearly 80 properties spread across the Netherlands. It started after a major financial crisis that almost wiped him out. At one point, everything he owned, including his Stradivarius violin, was on the line. He learned the hard way that dreams can be expensive, so now he invests in bricks and mortar instead of castles and fountains. That experience changed him. It made him cautious, even when his stage persona still sparkled. Now, as he approaches his 75th birthday, André is planning something massive, maybe even one last big hurrah! He'll return to Maastricht, his hometown, for a concert series that feels more like a farewell than a celebration. His health has already thrown warning signs, with cancelled shows and concerns about how much longer he can keep going. But he's not ready to say goodbye. His son Pierre runs the production company and says André would rather give up his precious violin and lay off a single orchestra member. That's how deeply he cares about the people who've been with him for decades. And yet, when anyone brings up retirement, André just laughs it off. He jokes about performing until he's 140, and he's half serious. That stubborn spirit keeps him going. Even at 75, he's still doing up to 100 concerts a year, all while traveling with a personal trainer and obsessing over his sleep to stay sharp. He truly believes music has healing powers. He's heard it from fans, even from doctors who say his concerts are like medicine. And maybe that's why he won't stop. Because for André Rieu, every note he plays is a way of giving something back, a way of staying young, and a way of rewriting the pain he grew up with.